So I'd like to welcome everyone to Using Online Tools to Capture Student Learning with Derek Schellenberg. It's always great to have people from all over Ontario joining us for these OTS Connects professional development sessions as we learn together and learn with each other. I'd like to welcome Derek to be our presenter tonight. Derek's an amazing presenter, very knowledgeable, a fantastic teacher, and we're just really happy to have him here with us. So over to you, Derek.
Thanks, Mallory. Hello, everybody. Excited to be working with you tonight. Looking forward to sharing some things in terms of how to use technology and some different tools that we can use with our students. And I'm hoping to learn a little bit from you as well in terms of what you use, as well as what you would like to be able to do with your students. So I'm hoping there'll be lots of learning, as Mally said, with this group. Feel free to take me on any tangent in terms of something you'd like to ask, a tool you'd like to go into more detail about. Please go for it. And also keep in mind, probably at some points when I get a little momentum going, I might be going a little too fast. So feel free to slow me down and get me to explain sort of in detail what you'd like to learn with regards to the various tools. So we're going to get going, and a little bit of information about me will come up in a second. This is just the title slide. So I teach in Newmarket, which is about an hour north of Toronto, and I work in the York Region District School Board, and I happen to think that the images down here look nothing like me, but we'll talk about those later. A little additional information. Yep, Twitter handle, thanks very much, Mally. So I've been teaching for about 20 years. Primarily, I teach English to high school students. I've taught literacy. I taught a little business when I first started out, which I had no business teaching. And currently, for the last 7-8 years, I've been working in a BYOD or blended learning program within my school, which means that the students all bring their own laptops to class, which provides interesting opportunities, and it also provides some challenges as well. So that may come up at some point as we explore different types of technology. So in terms of what we're doing tonight, just a little bit of front matter in terms of defining what an online tool is. We'll talk about red tools versus green tools, and that's going to look different for all of us. So I encourage you to dig into your board in terms of what they're comfortable with in terms of technology before you make any decisions about what you would like to use or what new tool you'd like to bring into your classroom. Some criteria to consider. Hopefully an arsenal of online tools we can add to what you already know. And then lastly, we will do an activity at the end. It will be a quiz. It will count on your final report card, and that will involve reviewing sort of what we learned tonight. So, couple things. This is a session description. I don't want to spend a lot of time here. It's a little ambitious in terms of the description, but I think what I'm interested in is the ability to use tools to go beyond the product. So, for example, I'm sure you've had this as professional development in your boards, the idea of triangulating student data using conversations, observations, and products. I'm not sure about you, but for me and my English department, we focused on the products a lot, which is great. But sometimes we can learn a lot from our students by, listening to them, conferencing with them, observing them, and that's a different opportunity for them to show what they know as opposed to just the high-stakes product, the test, the essay, the presentation, the report. So those are a couple things to keep in mind as we move forward. So defining what this means, online tool, you might see similar synonymous definitions that involve web-based tool or Web 2.0 tool. So the idea is that these exist online. Yes, there will be a quiz, Melanie. I hope you're paying attention. And what we want to do is with these tools is they don't sit on your computer, obviously. They sit in the cloud, and that's where we've sort of really got to be conscious of, comfort level in terms of what we're using. So in addition to that, the nice thing about these tools is they're device agnostic. So it doesn't matter whether you have a PC or a Mac, even a tablet, they will work on most of those devices, and that's fine. With our students, we recommend that they have a laptop. It allows for a lot more functionality and productivity than an iPad, for example. These tools that I'm going to introduce you tonight, all of them are free, but some of them have additional features which you would pay for. I recommend never paying for anything. Having said that, there are a couple tools that I love that I do have paid versions of. And so last, just as a reminder, the student products sit on the internet. So that whether you're using Google Apps, which is now called G Suite, Google Apps for Education, or other tools that we're going to talk about, they do sit on the internet. Chrome boxes, we've used Chromebooks, yep, absolutely. So we've used Chromebooks before. I had no problem with them. They work with most of the tools that we used. I would say that the Chromebooks or netbooks that we were given to as a staff in our second iteration of sort of rolling things out for our school, the screen was too small. And so that actually prevented us from, working effectively with them. But I have no problem using netbooks for most of what we're using here. I do love my Mac, though. So I'm going to keep going, and we'll just move to the next slide. So I have a question for you to start off, and it's going to require guessing, and you have to be comfortable if you don't know the answer. I'm assuming there's lots of tools here that you may have seen some before, and there might be a few that you have no idea what that logo is, and that's totally fine. But could you take a couple seconds using the chat box and make a guess as to where we're going in terms of what's the difference between the green circle on the left versus the red circle on the right? What's the difference? And it may look different for you than for me in terms of these two groups of tools. So can you take a couple seconds and type in the chat box, and we'll see if we can guess. I like Melanie, safe tools and tools that are not private. I like that. Catherine, I use blended learning and my students have access to Chromebooks. I think that's great. I think it's awesome if we can give kids access to them in the classroom. Online learning environment, digital workflow versus assessment product. I love that, Farron. And Jan, green in a school protected environment, red not. So that's really good, Jan. That's excellent. So I think that's all. Everybody's guessed a little bit. So keeping in mind that I work within York Region District School Board, so this is going to be different for you, and I urge you, if you're interested or you're already using tools with your kids, to figure out what your board policy is in terms of this. So we'll talk about it in a second. Laura said green circle are interactive, safe, board approved. Love it. Red tools, good and versatile. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at Mr. Schellenberg's next slide here. Okay. So on the left, we have green tools, and on the right, we have red tools. So what does that mean within York Region? So it goes really well with Laura, Melanie, and some other people's responses. The green ones are for us, board approved. And the students are given accounts, a Google account, a student number, etc., that allows them to access these. So G Suite, which is, as I said before, the new name for all the Google Apps for Education. Moodle, which is what we call an LMS, Learning Management System. A lot of people, at least around me, have migrated from Moodle to Google Classroom. And then we have an extension for Google, Read and Write, which is awesome. And if you've ever taught e-learning, or maybe even taken a course via e-learning, Desire to Learn is an awesome platform, which I highly recommend. And what's amazing about it is it comes with a bunch of assignments that are pre-connected to the ministry expectations. So when I teach grade 12 English, I just choose which assignments I'm going to do, and there's way too many to cover in a single course. So the green ones are the board-approved ones. Our board people don't like the term red tools because it suggests, you know, red is stop, but they would actually advise that red is sort of caution. So with these tools on the right, we do not provide student accounts for them. So when I give students options in terms of you can choose whatever type of tool you want to create a slideshow, some of them will choose Google Slides, and some of them might choose something like Prezi or Haiku Deck, and that would be how they create it. And that's fine as long as we don't mandate the tool. If we say you have to use Haiku Deck or Prezi, then at my board, I have to then get permission. And I should get permission from their parents, and I should get permission from my school administration. So these are just some important things to think of in terms of using the tools that are red. These tools are amazing over here. So I'm sure some of you have used them, and that's fine. And if you're the only one creating them, no worries. But if you're having students use them, if you're having students create in them, and they're giving away their personal information, please communicate with your admin, communicate with your parents, and have sort of a backup plan in mind if they're not comfortable using that tool. So we recently used Twitter, and we had grade 10s doing, you know, tweet chats online about Romeo and Juliet in character, but I had to get permission from my admin before I could go ahead with that. So that's really quick. I'm not trying to scare anyone off, but I want to make sure that you guys are all safe when you use your tools, okay? So again, these are just some quick things to consider when we are choosing tools. So is it approved by my board? Doesn't mean that I can't use it if it's not, but I need to go through the proper channels if it's not. Do I need permission? Does it collect student data? So even a Kahoot, theoretically, if you're having students put in their full names, will collect student data. What preparation is needed for the teacher? What teaching is needed before the students start using it? Do I need parent and guardian permission? And then probably the most important questions, once you've got the comfort level with all the stakeholders taken care of, is how does the tool connect to my course or grades, curriculum expectations? What's the purpose? What am I hoping to get my students to learn by using this tool? And sometimes, although some of the people that I work with are very proud to say we're virtually paperless, sometimes it's better not to use a tool and go to old-fashioned methods in terms of pencil, paper, etc. I'm just reading Melanie's comment here. I never hear people talk about getting consent, and it's a great thing. Yeah, absolutely. So we want to be really careful in terms of how we use these tools. So we're going to start with where you guys are at first, and then we'll dig into an array of tools. And as I said, you can stop me and focus me on certain ones if you're interested in some more than others. So what I'd like you to do now is we're going to pop this link, this bit.ly, into the chat box. And bit.ly is great. It's a URL shortener. So you'll notice that I took the code for the Padlet that we're about to go into, and I dropped it into bit.ly, and then I can actually change the letters that are to the right. So Padlet tools, I tailored them to a URL that I like, and then it makes it easier to remember when students or teachers have to actually type it in. So, yeah, so Mally's already provided it for you. So what I'd like you to do is click on it. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to ask each of you to post at least once and answer two questions. One is, what tools do you currently use or you're familiar with? And the second one is, more important, I think, what would you like to be able to do with your students using a digital online tool? So I'm going to just share my screen, and I'll meet you in the Padlet. And if we're not sure how to type in a Padlet, you just double-click anywhere, or you hit the plus sign that's in the bottom right. So I can see that a couple people are in the document already. So we've got Laura, we've got Anonymous Online Tools person, we've got Catherine, we've got Farron, and we've got the symbol L. So I just created an example post here to the left. Online tools I currently use, and I'd like to be able to do this with my learners. Wow, we've got some Google Apps people here. Okay. I might be turning over the mic and having you guys teach me some things. So it's good. Okay. So Catherine has D2L, fantastic. Google Apps for Education, Docs, Presentations, Forms, Padlet. Melanie uses Google Classroom, which I think is becoming more and more popular. Padlet as well. And we have Laura, G Suite, Classroom Slides and Docs. Canva's interesting, Kahoot, Weebly, Padlet. Okay, so we're using some of the same tools for sure. And then we've got Farron using G Suite. Shobi, I've not heard of. Explain Everything I've seen, which is really cool. Padlet, green screen, which is great. And then we've got Google Classroom over here to the right. So I'm looking for that second question. And I've got, we've got Marla down here at the bottom as well. Google Drive and Docs. So Catherine's saying, I want my students to do is become more comfortable with the technology. So that is interesting. And Farron is saying, I'm an innovation and learning coach, so I support teachers with integrating and leveraging one-to-one technology within our board. So that's fantastic. I find sort of there's two pieces to that, Farron. I don't know if you do. One is showing people how to use the tool, and another is helping them think about ways in which to use it for their classroom. Sometimes the learning part can happen, but they're not sure until they see examples how they might actually use it in their class. And I'm just going up, and Melanie says, I'd like to be able to explore more safe digital tools with my learners, which is great. And Laura is, I would like to be able to curate student work, have peer editing, self-reflection, exit cards. So a lot of these things, definitely you can use Google Suite tools for, but some of them you might pick a specialized tool. And then lastly, we have Marla. I want to become more comfortable with technology and learn more tools to enhance learning engagement. Okay, so that is fantastic. That really, really helps. And I think we might be able to go deeper into some of the specific characteristics of some of these tools because we've got a lot of experience here. So I'm going to ask Mally to drag me back into our webinar here. Oh, beautiful. Thanks so much. Someday I'll learn to do that. And so you guys have all shared, so I'm just going to share really briefly, and then we'll actually start digging into some tools. So which online tools do I use regularly? So that's on the left-hand side. And then the other thing that we want to talk about briefly is online tools that I use occasionally for specific purposes. So I've listed a few in both categories, but I like to think about these are sort of my meat and potato go-to tools on the left, and then on the right, for specialized purposes, I use specific tools. So just as examples, we'll just go to the next slide. So like a lot of you, I'm listing the same things. So docs, slides, forms, sheets, and sites. And if people are comfortable, we might dig into sites a little bit tonight. Google Classroom, Desire to Learn, one person mentioned that, And then I used to use Moodle, but now we've sort of moved away from it. And then on the right, some simple tools that a lot of us mentioned already. So Padlet, and then we have Kahoot. Twitter is something that I don't necessarily use a lot with my students, but I use it for my personal learning network. In terms of the only reason I use Twitter is to connect to other teachers and share ideas and also adapt some of the ideas that I get from them. Yeah, Laura, I hear you in terms of never liking it. I don't like necessarily its, its layout or its appearance or its aesthetics, but it's useful in terms of, it has some of the things that I need. Yeah, limited choices too. I think if you couple D2L with a lot of the Google apps, it can become a lot more interesting for students. Flipgrid is something that I urge you guys to check out. So it's a very simple way to get students to use videos. The free version allows videos of up to 5 minutes in length. It's a great tool. The nice thing is students do not have to make an account to use it, which is fantastic. You create an account and they record the videos, but this is definitely a tool that you want everybody comfortable with, students, parents, guardians, and admin, before attempting to use it, because you are capturing student image. So we want to make sure we're being comfortable with that. My school computer would not allow me input here. Okay, that's interesting. Slides Carnival, second one from the bottom. If you use Google Slides at all, this is a place to go for better templates. Okay, so it basically gives you tons and tons and tons of options. Some of them are specific to certain times of year, whether it's Halloween or other occasions, and it's great. So I build all my slideshows, including the one we're in tonight, out of Slides Carnival. Thanks, Molly. And then another tool that maybe we'll go visit at some point is TED Ed Lessons. And we all know TED Talks, I'm assuming, and they're usually 18 minutes, sometimes less. But TED Talks are 4 or 5 minutes typically. They're a teacher's lesson that's been animated into a video. They organize it by subject area, so you could have literature, math, science, TED Talks. I teach mythology in grade 9. There's lots of mythology lessons. They're great. And then you could either, embed them into a Google form, share them with your students, or they also have their own TED Ed lesson format where there's questions that are multiple choice and open-ended, and you can even, they used to call it flipping the lesson, but you can even adapt the existing lesson and make changes to suit your specific kids. So lots of tools. We'll get to some of them tonight. There's no way we can get to all of them, but I urge you to definitely check out TED Ed Lessons, Slides Carnival, possibly Flipgrid, depending on your class. Okay, so keeping going. So let's go. We're going to take a quick look at some online tools, and feel free to stop me, and we'll explore some in more detail than others, depending on the group. So the first one is not really going to fit within some of the categories that we've talked about so far. It's very simple. It's called Bitmoji. So once upon a time, this company made bit strips, which were kind of cool, and you could basically create little comics. So we had students in grade 12, they would choose a scene in Hamlet, and they would create a comic connected to that and incorporate some Shakespearean quotes, and it was kind of fun. They don't do that anymore, but they've moved on, and if you've gone to social media and followed teachers, a lot of them are using Bitmoji, and I don't think this looks anything like me. It's like a bad game show host, but this is supposedly me. And so what you do if you want to use Bitmoji is you grab your phone, you download the app. It's interesting because it will take a picture of you, and then it will give you something, and you can modify it in terms of removing the wrinkles under your eyes. I'm sure none of you have them, but I do. And you might add or change your hairstyle, coloration. You might make yourself physically look larger, thinner, whatever. you probably could spend hours and hours and hours on creating your own and supposedly tailoring it to what you imagine that you look like. Anyways, in terms of how we might use this, it's sort of just a little add-on gravy feature. Once you've made your Bitmoji account and created an image that looks like you, we've got teachers here to the right, teacher here to the left, and then I believe this is a Spanish teacher in the middle here. You can actually put it in your Chrome extension, and you can just choose them while you're in Google Chrome, choose what image, and drag it into students' work, etc. So this, at the bottom, the text here is a little messed up, but we have a couple things. So first of all, the link, which Mally's provided. One reason you might use it is it looks like you, and although we don't want to give tons and tons of information to kids, it's nice to give them, have some personal connection with them in terms of relationship. It's a Chrome extension, so once you add it, it just shows up in your Google Chrome to the right of where the web address is, and you can just pick it, and you can actually do a little search, and you can find positive pictures which will have this likeness of you on them, and you can drag and drop in the documents. So it's hard for you guys to read it. You'll have access to the whole slideshow later, but the one on the left, the teacher's being a little sad because the student says their Bitmoji actually looks younger than they look. This person here in the middle has created a bunch of them that are with Spanish expressions, which she drags into student work. Maybe this might be more elementary school, I don't know. And then to the right, we have teacher presenters, and these are their images for themselves, and they make a comment in their little tweet about how it maybe doesn't look exactly how they look. But it's just something a little bit fun, easy to use, feel free to play with. So, in terms of actually, tools that actually have a lot of different uses, these are three that I think are great places to start. So we have here on the left ThingLink, we have in the middle Google Drawing, and we have on the right Padlet. And a lot of you mentioned using Padlet, and I'll show you how to create one. It doesn't take very long. The one that you made, the one that you guys typed in tonight probably took me about 5 minutes to make. So I use Padlet regularly. For any of you who are devoted Padlet users, probably a couple months ago, you might have had a good cry when they announced that some features you would have to pay for from now on, and they started to limit the number of Padlets. I probably have 80, 90, 100. The interesting thing is when they made the announcement, everybody was told you can make 13 more, you can make 11 more, and it was different depending on how many you'd already made, which was, I found interesting. Lewis, do you have a question? Nope. Okay. Microphone, maybe? I don't know. All right. So in terms of the differences of these tools, before we look into one or two of them quickly, ThingLink is something where they're all one page, which I think is great. So think of them in terms of your graphic text. We used to make handouts. We don't need to make them anymore. This can be like an interactive handout. So on the left, we could put all kinds of resources connected to Shakespeare, including text, videos, hyperlinks to places on the internet, which is great. So you could either have it as the initial resource that students explore, or you could model it and have it as something that they build towards, meaning the product they create is going to be similar to the initial exemplar you provide for them in ThingLink. So it's not great in terms of having 30 people typing in it at the same time, like Padlet is, but it has some of the same functionality in terms of text, image, video, hyperlink. So ThingLink is an option. Padlet, super easy to use. And then Google Drawing is this one in the middle. And I'm not going to take credit for this. This is a colleague who sits beside me in the English department. She made this. And it's a Google Drawing. And she's just removed the text and added text boxes. And so her kids are in a comic superhero unit. So they're all creating different sort of origin stories for Batman, and they will sort of fill in each of the little boxes here in their Google Drawing. So I'll quickly show you how to use Padlet and Google Drawing, and then we'll take a look at some other tools. So just Catherine has a question. Has anyone used ThingLink to have students all add to the same document? So definitely I have not. We've used it as sort of an individual resource where students interacted with it, and we've used it as an option for a product that students could create at the end of a cycle of learning. But I've not had one where, you know, my whole class jumped in and they were all creating at the same time. I'm not sure if it allows that, whereas Google Drawing would. So we'll just take a quick look at a couple of these. So I'm just hoping to share my screen. Okay, so we'll go into Padlet really quickly first. And so here is myself logged into my Padlet account. And if I scroll down, it's going to do funny things to your screen. But there's a lot of Padlets that I've done, you know, over a number of years. So one example is this one. And so in grade 10, we teach dystopian novels. So really simple. You choose an image as your background, a dystopian world, and then, you know, you can use the top part here for your title. I usually ask them to put their first name. Again, I'm just trying to teach my kids we're not putting our complete name or other information all over the internet. So we keep to our first name, and then underneath the title you can add whatever instructions you want for this particular activity. And the nice thing is it can be really quick. So this could be something that's done at the start of class as a little activity before we dig into something deeper. So in terms of how to create it, I would go up to the sort of top left here and make a Padlet, and I would click on it. I've got a number of options. Some of them are relatively new. So things like the back channel, the shelf, even the stream are relatively new. They used to have sort of this random thing in terms of the canvas, and now you can actually have little connecting arrows. So if you want to do that in terms of a brainstorm concept map, mind map, then the canvas option might work well for you. And then their standard old forms are the wall, and to the right we have the grid. So I'm just going to pick one. I'll pick, I guess, the canvas one and select it. So it's just starting to create the Padlet. And a lot of people enjoy the fact that you get to choose your own image. So if I was making it about favorite desserts, I would choose this image, which is supposedly called Breakfast at Susie's. And also relatively new, you have two options in terms of your posts. I like the Dark Knight version, so I'm going to choose black. And you can choose, they have a little bit of choice in terms of font style, so I'll just leave it. Also in the top left beside your title is a little sort of logo or icon, so you can pick something. So let's pick the cupcake, and it magically appears. And then if we scroll down to the bottom, we can tailor that URL a little bit. So I'm just going to mix in OTF and desserts, and it will probably tell me if that's taken, and it looks like it's not, so I'm good to go. And then I could change the instructions, but I'm not going to. I'll just go to next instead. And I leave mine as secret, but you can put it as public. And I always want those with access to write. But later, if I want to, or if we're done and I want students to be able to access it later, but I don't want them typing anything, I can change it so it only can read at that point. But I'll leave it in terms of can write for now. And I'm going to go next. sorry, one thing I wanted to show you guys. It'll let me. Okay. Does have a profanity filter. And I would say the one thing that you have to be aware of for this tool is, of course, the strength of it is that students who might not be comfortable talking in your class might be more likely to post responses. So that is a positive thing. The drawback of this particular tool, of course, is that it is anonymous, and as a result, you can get responses that may be off topic. So it might not be a tool that I would use first day of school. After I've developed a little bit of a rapport with the kids, then I can use the tool. So I can post something here, type in something as a title, that's fine, and then I can post something here, and that's fine. So this is just, it's very simple in terms of how to use it. It's a pretty easy tool to use, and I think we're all probably comfortable with it. So I'm assuming there's no questions. Yeah, so Catherine, using Padlet also teaches collaboration and respectful communication. Absolutely, and I think just as we want to teach the behavior in class for how to act with the teacher, with each other, etc., we want to teach those same things when we're using digital tools. Okay, that's interesting, Farron. Okay, I don't think I've necessarily used the profanity filter all the time. I didn't know that it would take out a word like drugs, so that is interesting. Okay, good to know. So that's that tool. Let's take a quick look now at Google Drawing, which allows you to do some of the same things. It's more what I would say for creating a document, maybe that students can interact with. Let me show you, for example, some that I have already first. So if I just do a little search in my Google Drive by drawings, there's a couple of drawings that I've made there. And let's see what this was. Hopefully this is okay. Okay. So this is simply a chart that was made in Google Drawing. It's pretty straightforward in terms of how to make it. Not that pretty. In this case, I made one for each of 5 or 6 groups, and then they have an opportunity to type in the document and respond to it. So you can make it look like Padlet. It's not going to have those, bubble posts, but you can probably get students to do more with it. And then, like all the Google apps, I think what we love about them is the ability to give comments to students. So I think that's really important. And it shouldn't be just teacher giving comments to students, but this is also an opportunity for peer-to-peer responses, which I think can be really, really powerful. So we just want to keep in mind that commenting is awesome. And I'm sure I can give a better comment than this, but I'll just type this for now. And the difference between it and the chat box up here to the right is the chat box is going to work when I have multiple people in the document. The chat content disappears. So if I want to engage in real peer editing with my students, effective feedback, giving it to them before the assignments due, I'm going to use the comment feature. And with my kids, I tell them, we don't resolve the comments. You can reply to them when you've addressed the feedback, but we want to keep them visible. If I resolve them, can I see them later? Absolutely. But I don't want to have to go and open them again. If you use the chat box to engage in discussion, which sometimes I do when I'm in the document at night, and a student's in the document as well, is, those comments will disappear in the chat box. So it's something to keep in mind. So in terms of creating a Google Drawing, very simple. We go to New, we scroll down to More, we grab the Google Drawing here, and then you might choose a color in terms of the background. So we can just pick whatever color we want. I would always name it, because sometimes they disappear if they are unnamed. So we want to give it some sort of name. And then if you're going to have them type in the document, You might create some sort of chart, pretty easy to use. You might sort of provide a background color for your chart. You can play with the width of the boxes, etc., how it looks, and you can move things around. Now, a lot of people, of course, add images to it, so we just go Insert, and we grab an image. So the group that I present with loves cats, and I am sick of them, so I'm going to go with dogs instead. Hope that's okay with everybody. And so it's really easy to add images as well. And yeah, so Google Drawings, I think, is a really awesome tool. We would use this for Venn diagrams. We would use it for plot diagrams. My students, when they write a story, they'll use it for decision trees in terms of, you know, the character can choose to go left or choose to go right. So Google Drawings is an awesome tool, and if you set it up as the template, then you can share it out with your students using Google Classroom. So that's really fast. Does anybody want me to show more features of Google Drawing before we move to other tools? Or are people happy with just knowing it as an option in terms of ThingLinks 1, Google Drawings 2, and then a third option is Padlet, which we all, okay. All right, so just maybe I'll show a little bit more in terms of how we use it. Okay, so for me, my students, for example, my grade 9s are working in docs and slides right now, and they're doing group work. And so one of the things that we want to use, of course, is version history, and it allows us to see who contributed what on what day. So I'm not necessarily using it to mark directly from version history, but I will use it to look at who contributed. So I know who's in the group. I go to version history, and I can see that one person contributed with all of this, and so maybe the other group members did not. So version history can be really helpful in terms of assessing who contributed to the group. Obviously, in the top right, many of the Google apps, not all of them, not Google Form, for example, but many of them have the share button here, and it has a couple options. Because I'm in my board Gmail account, it'll look slightly different than if you use your personal one. So in most cases, what I'll do is I'll go share, and anyone at the board, and in this case, I want kids to be able to type. So I'll say edit. Anyone on the board can edit, and I don't really need to have individual sharing with the 5 students in the group, because even if somebody from another group went in, I can see what they contributed in the document, positively, negatively, etc. So typically what I would do is use those share settings. Anyone within my board can edit it and share it, put it in a folder, and give one per group. So I would have 5 documents, 6 documents, and say, okay guys, you're group 1, you're group 2, you're group 3, you're group 4, you're group 5. And they would work in the document. Where you'll spend most of your time in a Google Drawing is the insert feature. I've already shown you image. Text box is exactly as it sounds. We drag a text box, we type, this is an introduction to dogs. Wow. And then, of course, we highlight it. You can change the text color. We want to make it readable in our lovely blue here, and we might make it bigger. And as luck would have it, the neighbor's dog just started barking. So that's fine in terms of adding text. And then we can add shapes. And you might add a couple, and then students can make copies of them as they're adding to it, depending on your instructions. So I would just go solid white, and then if I was a student and I needed to make more, then I can just copy and paste, and we can create bubbles as we expand. The way we typically in my English department use this tool is we'll create a box using the shape feature, and we'll put it just outside, and you can do this to the left or the right. One reason why you would not do it to the right is because it'll not be seen once your comments start appearing, but this is where I would put my instructions over here to the left, and again, I would change the color, and then I would probably add a little text box, and this is where I would type my instructions. So you can't see it because I'm typing in black, and I'll just again highlight it, etc. Make them a little bigger, and I just need to center it because that's the way that I'm constructed. And then I would go add the instructions that the students need to do in the side. So this would be my template, and if I wanted an individual copy, I would use Google Classroom, an individual copy per student. I would use Google Classroom, create it as an assignment, and choose this, and then share out one to each student so that they could do the work in it. So those are some of the features of it that I use. And like I said, what I really love is the comment feature in terms of interacting with students. And another thing that's very simple to use is the link feature, where we just choose something to link, and then, oh, I want to link it to dog from Wikipedia, and I'll apply that link rather than actually putting the ugly, long web address in there. This looks a little bit prettier, and I'll just make the text change the color. So now we can click on this, and just like a thing link, you can have hyperlinks to things on the internet. So those are some features in terms of Google Drawing. Yeah. So I'm going to move on to some other tools. Hopefully that will help, and we might get a chance to see Google Drawing within some of the other tools as well. So I'm going to ask, hold on, if I can ask Mally to take me back to the room, please. I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. Beautiful. Okay. So, yeah, there we go. So in terms of these interactive docs or single-page interactive docs, some of the features they have, you can add images, you can add text, easy to design. The reason I like Padlet and Google Drawing is that students can interact with them en masse, so your whole class can be in the document at the same time. For all of them, you can add hyperlinks, you can add video, and it's great for gathering information. Okay, so I think those are some reasons why we would use some of those tools. And like I said, we use them as graphic organizers, but I love it when the students are constructing the work. So we're going to move to a little bit different group of tools here. So you might consider these online presentation tools. I think what we need to do is think about what are the different ways we can use them. So instead of it just being teacher presenting or students presenting, which is, initially what they were designed for, what are different ways we can use them? So if Google Slides, for example, allows everybody to be in the document at the same time, one thing you can do is have a slide for each person, and they're all contributing within the same slideshow. So, for example, if you're at the beginning of the unit and there was a bunch of terms that we all need to know before we can actually dig deeper into the science unit or math unit or literature unit, each student could be responsible for digging into one specific term, coming up with a video, coming up with links, coming up with a definition, coming up with an example, and then instead of you creating the resource ahead of time, the students are going out, inquiring online, and they're constructing that tool together. So that can be a lot more effective and interesting when students are inquiring as opposed to I crack open their head and just pour the information inside. So it might be a sort of a more interesting way to use Google Slides. The other thing that you want to keep in mind with a tool like Google Slides is there's no reason why during a presentation, if you have a computer or a netbook or a Chromebook for every student in your class. Why can't they all be in it and giving feedback to that presentation group while they're presenting? This isn't sort of a first step strategy, but maybe as you go through your course, you build up to that where people can actually contribute and participate and create a back channel using the comment feature. And that way when the student sits down, rather than waiting 2 weeks for Mr. Schellenberg to mark it, they've got tons and tons of feedback from their peers and me that they received while they were actually presenting. Okay? So here's 3. Prezi has been around for a long, long time. Yep. So Catherine's saying, I use Google Slides for Jigsaw. Students can add so much more than just read and listen to each other's notes. So that is an awesome way to use Google Slides. It's fantastic. Haiku Deck, I'm just going to show you how it works. What's interesting about it is that it's limiting in terms of the use of image, and it's limiting also in terms of the use of text. And I think that can be a real strength if you use it as an initial tool at the beginning of a unit or at the beginning of a course, and then you give students more freedom later and allow them to use Google Slides at a later date where they have access to all those features. But the nice thing about Haiku Deck is the fact that it's so limiting, and it does look beautiful when you actually create one. So I'll show you how Haiku Deck works very quickly, and then we'll go from there. So I'm just going to go to share my screen, and Haiku Deck is located. Okay. So I'll show you an example first of a Haiku Deck, and then I'll show you how to construct one. And as a teacher, you would have to make your own account to use it. Depending on the age level of your students, it might be something where you could give it as an option. So in terms of the way it looks when you're presenting, it's super simple. You can see at the bottom we've got just 2 options, forward arrow, backward arrow. In this case, this specific assignment was Pekakucha, and the pronunciation, I'm sure I'm mangling, but essentially it's supposed to be 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide. Students not supposed to put a lot of text on it, so Haiku Deck is perfect for that. So it's a 6-minute and 40-second presentation. With our classes in grade 9, what we did was just sort of a modified version of that, where they could only make 15 slides. We did it at the beginning of the year, and this is sort of how they introduced themselves. So these were the instructions for the activity. So in terms of its appearance, I can choose an image. The image is going to take the whole slide size. I can play a little bit with the sizing. Text, I can't put much more than a sentence or 2, and then I can choose the location on the slide for the text. Other than that, super simple. So we assume this girl is getting ready to do a presentation. She looks very serious and focused. Here's a little description of the actual activity. You can use their search engine to choose images, or you can take little screenshots or upload your own images as well. So this was just an image I found, and then we adapted it for this specific assignment. So this is just an explanation of what the students will be constructing, and it's obviously connected to time. I like that the images in the search engine, they'll connect to it, but they won't be obvious. So this is obviously, we have a clock because it's talking about time. The bear is explaining you only had 5 minutes in total for your slideshow. Just watching the bears appear on another screen, so hopefully it's loading for you. And then we can see that the images are quite dominant. So this is a cat that's freakishly close to the screen. Okay, so in terms of how to construct a Haiku Deck, just show you how that works really quickly. So here is an account. So I'm logged in to Haiku Deck. It says that I'm a superstar. I don't feel like one at this moment here. So I've got an example one here, but we're just going to create a new one. So we're going to click on the green button, create a new deck. Okay, and we'll just end the tour. So we have a couple of basic options. So usually for the title slide, we might sort of stay with the top left, and we could say test, and this is an example. Okay, and so in the left-hand side, we've just got a couple options here, pretty simple. And Cynthia, I will come back to that question. That's a great question about Google Slides. So the first one on the left here is just for image. And what it does is it chooses words that it thinks are important from the text that you wrote. So it's got here test, an example, and I click on one, and then it comes up with a bunch of images that are related to testing. So if I like this one here, I can choose it, and it's added it to the Haiku Deck. I'm just going to change the size right here a little bit. And then we have the next option here below the image is where my text is going to be located. So if I want to move it around, I can go and test appears above, test appears below, etc. Okay? And then, of course, we have our lovely features that cost, so we're going to ignore them. So we can record audio, and we can add video. You can't do that with the basic version. I've never needed to do it, so it's not something that I've worried about. And then you can add notes as well, okay? So you can add public deck notes. And again, you want to keep in mind that for this particular tool, it's going to publish it online. So it will be viewable. Again, I don't mind people seeing my work, but you have to be comfortable with that. In terms of a couple of little small features here as well, we can move things around slightly. It'll allow a little bit of movement in terms of the image, and it'll allow me to play with the sizing. Other than that, it's very, very simple in terms of what it can do in terms of functionality. So it is limiting, but I think it's a great tool in terms of creating a quick slideshow with really awesome quality images. And I think the actual strange search engine here is actually one of its strengths. So it comes up with some very interesting images. So it's pretty fast in order to create a slideshow. If I go back to Cynthia's question, I'm going to leave Haiku Deck here for a second, and I'm just going to go to my Google Drive again. So the question is, can we have more information on how students can give instant feedback on Google Slides? Okay, so if I go to the website here, just going to take me a second to give you an example. So this is a website created for a recent presentation. And, okay, so here's an example for you, Cynthia, that'll hopefully address this. Yeah, Captain, I love that too. I find that my students have this desire to put tons and tons of text on the slideshow, and it actually negatively impacts the quality of the slideshow. Okay, so here's an example in terms of a seminar slideshow that a couple years ago students did as a presentation in one of my grade 9 classes. Not sure if Catherine has a question there. And what I got them to do was, while the class was presenting, everybody was in the slideshow. So in this part of the presentation, we had an actual live performance. And then they switched into a seminar discussion after their live performance of 15 minutes. And the 5 group members would lead the class in a discussion related to a theme that they chose, and each member sort of created quotes, questions, etc. that were connected to their topic. So what's a little bit hard to see, can I go over to the right? I don't know if I can. But what they did was, as the students were presenting, you've got to the right here, all the students in the class giving them feedback. And it was 2 types of feedback. The feedback was both on the quality of the presentation, in terms of how they were presenting, and it was also on the quality of the slides that they constructed in order to do the presentation. So when these students sat down, so we had, let's say, Megan presenting first, Mackenzie, Ethan, Owen, Sammy. As Megan presented her slides, she had feedback to the right, and as soon as her group was finished, she could go through and look at all the feedback. And I'm in the document at the same time. I'm giving feedback as well to her, and I'm also monitoring the quality of the comments that are being given, and we're trying to move from this is good or good job or, you know, the picture's pretty to a deeper quality comment in terms of giving them feedback on, I love how you connected the quote to the question that you asked the class, because, etc. So this is something that I think that's really, really powerful. You can create a back channel by using the comment feature to the right. Yeah, I've used a shared Google Doc for that, but never thought about using the comments feature. So the comments feature is definitely one of the things I love about Google Slides. So I strongly recommend you taking advantage of that. And the other thing would be, whenever possible, give the students feedback before the assignment's marked. You're not necessarily going to edit everything, you're not going to correct everything, but I think it's much more valuable to give feedback before the assignment's due as opposed to after, when they can't obviously take any action in terms of that feedback. So it's actually more applicable at that point. So that's Google Slides. I think rather than bouncing back and forth between the presentation, I'll just stay on my computer here. So we're going to keep going, and there's a couple options. Oh, sorry, how do you insert comment features on the slide, Cynthia? Okay, sorry, I'll address that question. So if we go to here, if I want to address, if I want to add a comment to a slide, I can click anywhere on the slide, and I've got a couple options. I've got a little plus symbol up here that will allow me to type comments. So this image of Ariel, you can't read it, looks good. And I type that, and so then that comment has appeared on the slideshow for them. So if I just, yeah. So I think I clicked it here, so that appears there. So it's easy to insert comments on there, but you do have to click somewhere on the slide in order to actually add the comment. Okay, so I hope I've addressed that question, Cynthia. So we're going to keep going. So we're going to look at Google Sites, and I think what I'm going to do is actually give you guys a task to do. So I hope that you're ready for that. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to go here. I've posted a link at the bottom, and what I'd like you to do is go to that link, and we're going to attempt to do a quick little activity and then explain how it was constructed. Okay, thanks, Molly. So I'm going to go there as well. Okay. All right. So once you click on the link provided by Mally, it'll take you to this. And this is actually a website. And what I've done is embedded a Google form within the website. So we've got a simple game that I'm going to ask you to play. It's going to take a couple minutes. So this is called Teacher's Last Day of School. I'm not sure where you are in terms of your teaching career. Some of you may be close, some of you may be far, far away in terms of your teaching, and that's fine. We've got a little bit of instructions, okay? So it's your last day of school. You've got 4 things that you need to do before you can officially leave the building at the end of the day. So to help you, I provided 4 clues. So we have the eye, we have 2 of whatever these are to the top right. We have a picture that looks similar to the first school that I taught at, and we have a bill to the right, which you can individually tailor online. Just go to bill generator or receipt generator, and you can make your own. So this is Whoville, Ontario, and the cashier apparently was Molly Sue. And we scroll down to the puzzle that I'm going to ask you to attempt. If you were my students, I would say just type your first name, please. There's a really, really bad poem, and there's 4 questions for you to answer. You can refer to the poem to help you. You can refer to the 4 clues and the pictures above to help you. But what I will say is once you start typing, a hint will appear. So what do you need for the trip? If I say suitcase, okay, the hint below appears, and it says 2 of them, and I need a capital letter to begin. So what do I need for the trip after I retire? I can look up in my poem, or I can look at my lovely 4 pictures, and hopefully one of them relates to that question. So can I get you guys to take 3 minutes, 180 seconds? If you were in my class, I would put a lovely YouTube countdown clock on the LCD projector, but I won't inflict that upon you. You can take 3 minutes and attempt to answer the 4 questions. You will have to type something in the box for your name. Whether you want to reveal your first name, I think most of them I can see in the chat box already, but so I'll give you guys 3 minutes to attempt this. This is a Google form embedded within a Google site. And the activity is called Breakout EDU, which again, it's online. They have lots of games that you can access. Some of them are free, some of them are not, and they're very cool. It's kind of the concept of an escape room, but you're breaking in. Usually it's with a physical box with a lot of locks, as opposed to breaking out, which you would do in an escape room. So I'll give you guys 2 more minutes to attempt this. And maybe when you're done, so you've successfully put your name and solved the 4 clues, can you grab the checkbox? And that'll just help us know where you are in terms of completing the game. Catherine is done. No pressure, everybody else. Aaron is finished. That was alliterative. Just waiting a couple people. So as an exit ticket, you could, yeah. So Google Form is great in terms of so many different uses. I would use it for conferencing with my kids in terms of thesis. If they have questions about a lesson, like you said, that could be used as an exit ticket or a ticket out the door, whatever you want to call it. So in this case, it's meant to be fun. And then what we can also do is I'll show you how to construct on Google Form so that they can't finish the Google Form until they answer 1 or more of the questions correctly. So what I'm going to do is take a look at people's responses, if I can. I don't think it's going to let me. Yeah, the self-marking quizzes, I love that. That's an amazing feature. Love it. Fantastic. Okay, so we have Farron's done, Catherine's done. Only 2 people finished so far. Okay, so I've got my name, Derek. What do I need for the trip? I need 2 of them. Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I don't use, is I don't use the quiz feature in D2L for sure. So I think I don't have the first clue right. Oh, now I do. Okay. As soon as the hint disappears, you know you've got the right answer. What should you submit to be reimbursed? You need to submit it to the office. It says bill of sale, 7 letters with a capital. So, okay. Receipt is the answer for the second one. What will you need to give up? I'm sure you won't be sad to give these up. Those will be the keys to your classroom, staff room, etc. And then maybe you'll have tears, maybe you won't when you retire. I don't know. Hopefully you will. That might mean you have some positive feelings left for your job, the kids, etc. So what will you bring for the tears? We have Kleenex. Okay. So then I submit it, and that's great. So in terms of how to construct a Google form really simply that'll let you do this. Sorry. We go to New. We go down to More. And as mentioned, there's lots of different uses of forms. Of course, we use it often for a survey, those quiz feature, etc. Hopefully it will pop up for you. Okay, so there we go. So like the other apps, we want to name it. So we can call it quiz. That's great. And then when we ask a question, we can choose lots of different types of questions. So we'll just talk about what we're doing tonight. What do we call this type of OTF presentation? And I'm going to select over here from all the different options, short answer. And this is to do the same sort of hints that you saw on the Google form that we just did. We go to the 3 dots at the bottom, and we choose where it says response validation. So we click on it, and if you were teaching math or science or whatever, you could use, numbers. We can also force the length, which is a nice feature. So if some of your students are only giving you 1-word answers to your questions, which you work so hard to construct, then you can make the length, minimum count, maximum count. So force them to write longer responses if you wanted them to, or you could force them to be more concise. So what I was using was text. And so what do we call this type of OTF presentation tonight? We call it a webinar. And then this is where on the right-hand side, we give a hint. This will only appear when they do not have the answer correct. So as soon as they start typing, it appears. So I could go 1 word and starts with a capital. It's not the greatest hint in the world, but I don't want to give it away. So that's fine. So in terms of my Google form, I just have a need to make it a little prettier. I'm just going to add a quick little picture here. Okay. And what, of course, I would always hope that you would do, I'm sure we all do it, is we test it out before we try it with our kids. So we're just going to hit the preview button to take a look. And what do we call this type of OTF presentation? If I called it a seminar, oh, one word starts with a capital. Okay, oh, that's not it, because the hint is still there. But if I go back and type it in correctly, as soon as it's correct, then it'll allow me to submit. So you can also create sections within your Google form, and they can't move to the next section until they've answered that one correctly. So you could actually use this as a class activity that could span 30 minutes, 40 minutes. They have to do something for this section, and then once they've answered that question correctly, then they can move to the next section and the next part of whatever you want them to learn. What I also love, there's lots of things to love about Google Form, of course, is the ability to add videos. So if I want to add, if I want to add a video, okay, let's say some myth TED Ed video. Okay, so we've got Thor's journey and the land of the giants, and so that would work with my grade 9s in terms of our myth unit. I would, of course, immediately need to center it and make it bigger, because that's just me, and then I would have questions checking their understanding of the video underneath it. So the video is really, really powerful. And then, as Catherine mentioned and other people mentioned, we've got the quiz feature. So how do I turn it into a quiz? I go up to Settings, and I go to Quizzes, and I go Make this a quiz. And then I have a couple choices. When do I want them to see their grade? For me, it's usually immediately, so I leave it. I want them to know which questions they got incorrect, so I leave this, missed questions, but I don't usually tell them the correct answers. I want them to be able to, to force them to go back, think about which question is correct, and in some cases I would let them take the quiz again. Usually in English we don't count the quizzes for their marks, so that's how I would use that quiz feature. So I would go to Save, and then it only works with certain types of questions. So if I added my question here, what mythology is Thor from? Not the best worded question. I'm going to leave it as multiple choice because I know that's an option that actually works for the quiz feature. I'm going to say, oh, all my questions are going to be worth 5, and then I can give feedback. It's going to take some time, but I'm going to edit the question and go Norse or Egyptian or Greek, and those are my options. And so then I need to select which one is the correct answer, so that it's going to be Norse, and now I'm ready to go with my quiz. So once they're done, again, I can test it. Cool. I have to answer this question correctly to move to the next page. Okay, and then we choose this, and it gives the kids access to their score. So they scroll down and they can see that they got it correctly and they got 5 points. So it's pretty awesome in terms of being able to construct a quiz. Okay, so I think we went off the path there a little bit. So that is how to use Google Form a little bit. We've got not that much time left. What would people like me to focus on for the remaining 10 minutes, 20 minutes of our webinar? Would you like to learn about Kahoot? Do we all use that tool and we're comfortable with it? Would we like to learn about Google Sites? Oh, Mally's telling me I have 5 minutes. What would be a tool we'd like to use? Or would you like to have a quiz inflicted upon you? Thoughts from the, we'd like to learn a little bit about quizzes? Is that what we'd like, Catherine? Laura, yeah, so what I'm asking, Laura, is do you want me to teach you how to use one more tool, or do you want me to give you the quiz that I was going to give at the end of tonight's session? You did a puzzle, Laura. It's different from a quiz. One more tool. Okay. Do we want to see Kahoot, or do we want to see quizzes, or what are we comfortable with? What do we want to see? Yeah, Derek could go for another couple of hours. Okay. So let's go to quizzes then. Laura has spoken. Okay. So it looks similar in some ways to Kahoot, which I imagine some of you have used. Okay. So the nice thing about it is, so these are some of the quizzes, ones that I've made. So what it does is you can actually give it to kids in class, or you can give it to them for homework. Okay, so that's a sort of a difference between it and Kahoot. Okay, so web, Quest, OTF, that's great. And I'm not going to align quiz to state standards. Okay. I don't want to do that. Okay. So in terms of creating questions, this actually looks to me very similar to Kahoot's format. So I write the question here. Who is the moderator tonight? And we can go with Mally. Okay. And so here are 4 options, and I need to select my correct answer, and then I need to save it. And similar to Kahoot, I can set the time, so I can make it longer in terms of 2 minutes. I can make it shorter. It's hard to see up there, but I have different options in terms of the time. So I go and create a new question. What was tonight's session about? And I need to put it in the right place, so I'm just going to put it up here. And we can type in our options. You get the idea. I don't know if there's a difference. I'm not allowed in the kitchen. And so, yeah. So then we have our questions. And again, like I said, we can change the time. And so it's pretty easy to add questions to your quiz. I probably want to make it public, typically. And then when I finish, it asks me to do a couple things. So I'm going to say that this is for the 6th grade, and it's connected to English. And I'm going to save some details. So I've constructed my quiz, and then I've got 2 options. I can play it live in my class, or I can assign it for homework, and it creates a link. And with the homework option, if I click on it, then I can specify the time my students have to complete that quiz. So is it 1 day and 6 minutes from now? Then if I'm happy with that, I can click proceed. And then I have a couple options. Again, some of them are similar to Kahoot. If I don't want kids looking over the shoulder of each other, then I might shuffle the questions. I can shuffle the answer options. And then what do I want them to be able to see afterwards? Show the answers, show quiz review, etc. So it's kind of fun. What is different is that it adds these memes. You can choose from them, but it adds these memes that the kids get to see when they've successfully gotten the answer correctly or when they've unsuccessfully gotten the answer incorrectly. So it will give them a meme saying, try again, or nice try, or thanks for playing, whatever. So if you like these memes, it's a great little tool. So it is a little different in Google than Google Form and Kahoot that way. Students love Kahoot. This is an individual quiz. They get to see how they're doing versus other people, but it's individual, so everybody's at a different speed, at a different place on their computers, whereas Kahoot, you control everything centrally. So it works a little bit differently, but it's also useful and the kids enjoy it. That was an ultra quick overview. I apologize for the speed of it. So I think, guys, we will give you access to the whole slideshow, and it has links to every single resource and a bunch more that we didn't get a chance to look at tonight. And if you guys have any questions about any of these tools, feel free to email me. My email address is on the website, also, or sorry, on the slideshow. And you can also tweet, and I'm happy to point you in the right direction in terms of tools. Okay, so Mally again has provided you with that information. I hope some of this was interesting and new to you, and hopefully you'll choose some of these tools to use in your classroom.
Yeah, so I was just saying the slide up. So thanks, Derek, and as Derek said, he had a lot more to share. So I have put all of the resources that he provided on the resource page, and we'll be receiving that tomorrow afternoon sometime, along with the recording. And it was great, Derek, that you were able to demonstrate really well, and the tool worked, like the sharing tool worked today. So that was great. It only lagged once that I saw. So thanks. And yeah, you're right, Derek, the time went really, really fast. So just